Hi, welcome to Disruptive Live. I am Naoko Wari. Please introduce yourselves for me.
I'm Matt Wright. I'm the CEO of Global View Systems, and we are third-party application developers for communication systems.
I'm Chris Kent. I'm a product manager at Hytera Communications. We manufacture communications equipment mainly in the PMR industry.
I'm James Atkinson. I'm the editor of Land Mobile magazine and Critical Communications Today magazine.
Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Matt, let me start with you. So there is perhaps a sense that we are facing unstable times, politically and environmentally. With the terrorist attacks taking place, flooding, fires, the Grenfell Tower incident, and so on. How do you think the communications technology industry can play a part in helping organisations better cope with this uncertainty?
It's really a listening brief. They've got to understand the real problems in order to solve the immediate need. There's an innovation strand to that as well. They've got to keep innovating. You know, the rapid deploy of network in order to underpin the communication system. That's critical. There's an education piece, allowing the market itself to know what is available, what can be done, and really helping them on that side. So there's a lot that can be done, and I think there's a lot that is being done.
Thank you for that, Matt. Chris?
I think really it is about education and understanding to start with. Actually, you know, what are the issues and how can we solve them? I think technology, the rate at which it's developing helps with that, because you can combine different technologies to meet certain needs, that kind of thing.
James, would you like to add anything to that?
Just to say, I think there's a lot of pressure on companies and organisations to be more efficient, more productive, to work safer, to be safer. And communications technology can play an enormous part in enabling that. And it's a way for companies to make perhaps a step change in improving productivity and safety, and things like PMR with group calling, that kind of thing, means you can organise people if there is a problem much more quickly and better than using, say, one-to-one calling on a mobile phone and things like that. So the technology is there to help, and as the others have said, it's a case of getting that message out there and helping the end users understand what's available and what it can do for them.
Thank you for that, James. How would you describe the current state of wireless communications market, and what do you think customers are mainly looking for to answer their comms needs?
I think we're at a really interesting time at the moment, because there's been mobile phones and just fixed telephony for quite some time now. PMR, the land mobile radio, or professional mobile radio as it's also known, has been around for some time. But now there's all sorts of other things coming in, and there are big opportunities to pull in different types of technology. So unifying those different types of technology so you can actually extend what you have already and not lose that investment, but also adding other things, and also bringing in, of course, all the things that come with broadband, data, feeds, video, all sorts of other things. So it's an interesting time, possibly a little confusing for the end user, but that's what these guys are here to help sort out.
Chris?
Yeah, I don't know whether I can add any more to that. I think I agree with everything James has said there.
I think the pull of data is interesting. Everybody from whether they're in the industry mission critical or just a normal sort of consumer of data, they're become used to having data at the fingertips. I can get an app for that, I can do this. And I think that's been a challenge for the conventional PMR market. How do you respond to it? And I think in the eyes of the end user, they see the value over there in the smartphone app, and actually the thing that you need in your hand during a critical emergency is probably the two-way radio. So the things that Chris and her team have been championing within the industry is really sort of the advancements and the blending of the technology. So the Android devices that you're coming through, the multi-mode, that's been a real sort of shot in the arm for what's possible and what's coming next. But I think it's definitely an interesting time.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Matt.
We'll just add there, I think that whole pull of data, as you say, it can be a bit of a siren. I think, as Matt said, in a crisis, voice is what matters, and I think a message to get out there is don't think you need to get rid of PMR, or it's not it's a technology that's been around for a while, but it still does an amazing job, probably better than anything else. So it's a case of building on that and bringing in some other technologies to complement it, and complement, I think, is the word here.
I think actually sometimes PMR, it addresses, for example, things like coverage needs. Some of the technologies that deliver data solutions sometimes cannot perform in places as well, and the PMR will always get through, the voice will always get through. So I think that's important.
That's it. Yeah.
Wonderful. What are the main challenges customers are facing when it comes to their communication needs, and what are the key problems they want to solve? Matt?
Oh, it's so wide-ranging, really. I think it's a big question. But I think in the world of critical communication, you touched on it, in the uncertain times we've got now, the threat hasn't been a phone call from a terrorist to a police station. It's someone going onto a bridge and causing harm there. How do you better protect? And I think the challenge is, how do I mobilise my team effectively and quickly enough to reduce the risk to the public at large? So I think it's a very difficult question to round.
I think if you think of things like you mentioned in the first question, the Grenfell Tower, that was about the communications have to be clear. The coverage has to be there, it has to be instant, it has to be easy to use, those kind of things. So being able to provide a solution where the users are confident that when they enter somewhere like that, they're going to be able to communicate, they're going to be able to see, that kind of thing.
One of the big things are when the team are entering, it's obviously a different, Grenfell's a great example of this. They're going into a stairwell, it's very difficult, the environment itself is very... How does the fire service perform the duty to the public, but also have a duty of care to the actual firefighters? And so you see in things like the asset tracking, where are the team indoors, where are they outdoors? That level of additional data that can be provided through the two-way radio is an essential part of the jigsaw in order for them to protect and help their team.
James, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I think that's Matt's point. I think is very good. The technology is there to also to help the people that are actually responding and to keep them safe as well. And there's a lot more that can be done now. The move into digital PMR, it's just these asset tracking bio harnesses. You can actually sort of see if a fireman is running out of oxygen or his heart rate has got to a point where you think, maybe we need to pull him out. It's all that kind of thing that can now go on. But in more sort of general businesses, security guards, it's all that kind of thing. But it's as Matt says, it's also about that mobilisation at a time of crisis. Do you have the structure and the technology that's simple to use, that everybody understands, so that the reaction can be as quick and as effective as possible?
That's the key to it. How do I get the team to respond to an incident as fast as possible? So in Grenfell's example, it might be to get the right people in the right positions on the stairwell to stop congestion within the piece, and that needs some robust communication solutions and actually mobilise your team effectively. It's a difficult task.
It is, thank you for that. How do you think the wireless technology can best help them solve these challenges, not just in terms of what technology can do, but how the industry can work more collaboratively with partners, the channel and end users to support them? Let's start with you, James.
A lot of it is to do with communication. The technology is there. It's understanding what all the different new technologies can do and how they can best work together. So the industry has got to make that, help the end users understand what's available, and then get that message out to, you need this, that, you probably don't need that. And then that has to work down the channel, so to the distributors, the software designers, and down to the resellers and the dealers. That message has to go all the way down, because the dealers and the resellers are the guys that are talking to the end users. They need to understand all this. They need to understand what's there. What's in it for them as well. There's all sorts of new things. It's not just selling a radio and a system. There's all sorts of things they can now add in terms of software applications and things like that. So there's an incentive for everybody to get together and work there. But end users tend to just suddenly they need something, and then they don't deal with radio or communications. It's a tool. So their focus isn't that. Their focus is on their business. So it's helping them to see how this can help their business help them perform better, help them keep their people safer, more efficient, work more efficiently.
It's a key point actually, because a lot of the channel are going in to the person who's historically looked after the communication system. It's probably not the person in the decision-making unit that you want to be speaking to. So organisations like the NHS, they have a resilience and response team that are set up to look at how are we going to do this, and taking a holistic view of the entire piece. And I think if you just go in at the historical radio specialist in that organisation, you're going to miss a whole lot of value, and you're going to miss really the opportunity to really make a positive impact on that organisation. I think that's critical. They have to see the opportunity is bigger than just the person that they're speaking to.
I think from a manufacturing point of view, we need to be aware of our direct people are our channel, so we work through a channel, but also having that link to end users as well through the channel, so that we design the right products and solutions to get to the guy right at the end, the people at the end, because I think sometimes you can get a situation where you develop things and you think this is great, but in actual fact it's not really what people need. So it's really having that, that good close relationship with our channel, but also with end users, supporting them as well.
Chris, voice communications are obviously tremendously important still, but there is clearly a growing desire to harness data in one form or another. How does this affect your perception of the market, and what you need to do as a business to respond to that demand?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because actually that's something we have been putting a lot of effort into actually. Yes, voices, as we all know and we've all said here a number of times this morning, is the most important, but people do have varying degrees of data requirements, anything from high level data, streaming video, to just short forms of data in terms of SCADA and telemetry and alarms, for example. But being able to understand the different, for example, the data sizes, the data requirements, because that sort of tailors what you design to complement it. And PMR does address some of that already. Some of it we can already do. Internet of Things, for example, some solutions can actually be used in conjunction with PMR, SCADA and telemetry as well. But there are other types of data that it just can't be addressed in that industry, and it's about maybe providing products alongside that can address that, but also maybe, as we've said in a number of times this morning as well, providing that connectivity to the important voice as well. So I think that's, if a manufacturer or a technology provider can do that, then that helps to provide this unified communications that we talk about.
But one of the big hits for the manufacturers at the moment is the video cameras, the wearable video cameras. You're seeing them at football stadiums, in shopping centres, on the security, and just the data isn't there to actually stream the solution over the current communication, but actually the process of having the unit on the end customer, making sure video forms part of their normal operating procedure, giving them the ability to stop and hold back any threat just because there's a camera pointing at people. It's a difficult thing, and I think that's the first step I see. Which is a really important step, and it seems to be embraced by end users across a wide variety of verticals.
Yeah, body-worn video really does seem to be taking off. But there are other things that even traditional radio can do. Digital radio is like that you can move stuff from what used to be on the PDA world onto radio. So you've got workflow management systems, task systems, so people can go in and actually use this checklists on digital things. So just in ordinary walks of life, when a facilities manager or something's walking around checking electricities or whatever it is, alarms, things, you can do all that. Or cleaners with radios. Yep, I've cleaned room X and all this kind of stuff. All this can be done over the radio, which actually gives more value to that, even though it's principally a voice device. It does all this kind of stuff too, and that can be really useful and very help drive efficiency into all sorts of different everyday businesses, not just the sort of public safety or.
And that's part of the decision-making unit, because then you're not going in at the person who's selling the radios, you're going at the manager. How do you better manage your team on site? And so the task management will allow you to see the, I've got a team of 20, I've got 2 that are really not doing a great job, and I've got 18 that are doing a fantastic job. So I'm going to try and work on the 2, and if they don't pull up, then they go, and then I can really sort of have an excellent team giving real efficiency. And I think that's something that we see a number of industries requiring: healthcare, manufacturing. That task management and effective management of their team is a real strong point that the data of the two-way radio can provide, very simply as well.
Actually, the technology is such now that it makes it easier for partners like yourself to be able to integrate, bolt-on applications actually to the radio infrastructure, and the radios themselves that assist with that as well.
And it extends yours as well. You've created this wide-ranging portfolio of products, but you can only do it from the view that you've got. You can't see the fine details of the customers that we would see. And again, we need the channel to deliver that sort of real problem contract from their end customer and understand their world. So we use the tools that Chris and her team provide to enhance the products and maybe take it in a direction that perhaps you wouldn't have gone down as a major manufacturer. So that creates opportunities for us to grow and for us to protect and help other people as well. It is quite an exciting time.
I think you've also got shouldn't forget that the GPS is in virtually every radio.
Absolutely.
So tracking where the workforce is can be absolutely vital. And now there are all sorts of ways you can actually do it indoors where you don't get GPS, but there are indoor location beacons and all sorts of things, so you can track security guards and things like prisons. It's enormously important to know where the guards are, in case anybody gets isolated somewhere and needs help quickly, and you need to send somebody. Also, but in all sorts of walks of life, in a logistics factory where there are a lot of lone workers or a big petrochemical plant, this is a hugely important tool that just comes with the radio, most radios anyway.
And that's part of the challenge as well, the lone worker one in the warehousing. I've seen a number of examples. We see these mega factories coming in, these big distribution arms, and they've replaced the human aspect with robots. And so that's fantastic. You get efficiency saving, you get pack quality size, and everything around that is really good. But now you've got fewer people, and they're always in a danger position. So you can use the indoor location side to actually trigger a lone worker alarm. I'm going into the area where I've got to repair the on-site machinery, and I'm coming out, I'm in the safe zone. So you can really sort of leverage the data that this thing has got at the back end and still have really high quality voice communication around site. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Matt, there is now a fairly wide choice of connectivity technology options available to customers, including narrowband PMR, broadband, 3G, 4G, cellular, push-to-talk, over cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so on.
Yeah.
Do you think this is confusing for customers or something they are looking to embrace?
It's definitely confusing. I think there's a wide variety of ways to pass data around, and I think that's where you've got to pare it all back. Forget the technology. As much of a geek as I am, I'd just pare it all back. Let's focus on what the person needs. And it might be that the two-way radio is the best one for the majority of the team on site, but there might be ancillary guys and girls who are working not in the main area, they're out on the road. Well, a push-to-talk over cellular might be better for them, and then inside the Bluetooth. But it's really understanding what they want to achieve and how we can better help them, and then put the technology stack on top of that. I think that's a challenge.
You agree, Chris?
I totally agree, and I think sometimes one complements the other, but is not necessarily as essential either. So it's a nice to have. So yes, you adopt it and maybe it integrates with the essential, but if it's not there, it's not mission critical that it's not there. So I'm probably referring there to maybe more high-speed data. I still think voice is the most important aspect of communication, but the other bits definitely are nice to have, and it's about finding the right nice to have, actually, because there's a number of them now. So
but we treat the voice as the highest priority as well. If our software is linking to an alarm system, let's say, it may have gone faulty, it may be throwing data out constantly, that's going to collapse the voice side of it. So we withdraw the communication. We say there's been far too many, we've told you once, it's enough. Voice is now going to be taking priority. So I think it's really getting that voice, getting the communication as fast as possible, and keeping the data to a minimum at times.
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about being able to address the wider part of the end user to understand what it's not just what the X needs. It's actually we really needed some push to talk over cellular radios because we've got managers who do this. They don't need the radio, but they do need to talk to the guys with the radios. So it's just understanding that broader need within communication need within the entire enterprise or organisation.
It becomes more complex when organisations have to then communicate with other organisations, and that becomes the real challenge. Each one will pick their own flavour of communication, and in that emergency what you really want is them to all talk together.
Of course. How can the industry help them find the right comms technology choice or choices for their needs?
Education?
Yeah, I think it is education, and from an industry perspective, I mean, I can speak from a manufacturer perspective because that's what we try and do. But from an industry perspective, I think the likes of land mobile and those types of communications are a really good vehicle for talking about, for example, a particular customer requirement and how that was fulfilled in the end. What sort of technologies were selected and why. That makes for a good read. And
I think case studies are really key, and I think everybody needs understanding why a customer has made the decisions they have and what they put in and what goal they were trying to achieve, what they were trying to solve, what they were trying to enable, and getting that message out. So magazines obviously traditional magazines still have a part to play there, the online channels particularly as well, but also every manufacturer has their own online, and their dealers and resellers. It's pushing that information out as far as you can get. So hopefully it reaches the end user and they get some understanding of the kind of choices they need to be thinking about and what's available to them. But education I think is always a problem in any industry, trying to get new technology or new ideas out. It's never easy, but in some ways the proliferation of technologies gets in the way. There's too much noise
there is too
out
much
there.
noise.
Right,
So how you get that cut through is I think probably the challenge the industry needs to.
It's also difficult because it addresses so many verticals. So how do you get that message that manufacturing needs to look at Industry 4.0, the data, the machines that can all be plugged in on the SCADA or in the PLC control? How do you then translate that education piece into a hospitality when it's really about management of their reputation, making sure guest welfare is high? It's the same alarm integration side, it's the same data, it's the same physical hardware you're working with, but the message is slightly different. It's very difficult.
But that, one of the things that might help there is, like the industry events, so they're targeted at particular verticals. So for example, BAPCO that's coming up soon is really aimed at, mission critical comms. And then you've got utilities events like not CCE, what is it? UT.
Oh,
yeah. The European
thing, don't they? Those kind of
oil and gas,
oil and gas, and they sort of target and hopefully they sort of kind of capture the requirements that are needed in that vertical. One hopes that end users visit them. Sometimes we're a little bit thin on the ground for end users, but definitely, at least if our partners are there, the manufacturers get an idea of what people are looking for. So maybe that sort of helps with that too.
But I think that's the thing. The partners themselves aren't specialists, so they'll go and grab these bits and do their very best with it. But again, from top down, from land mobile through to the distribution, then into the channel partners to the end user, it's got to be a real seamless, simple message that goes through to them.
And as you say, there is a difficulty there in terms of fine, the underlying technology is the same, but the uses, the fine things you need to do at the end in a hotel is so very different to a mine. They've got different things, they need different applications to help them do their jobs, and so you've got to get some message through to them, but there's always that sort of bespoke element in terms of the way things are treated, and that's quite hard because you need to target each vertical to do that, to get that message over to the particular needs that they have that you've got to address, and they're all a bit different. So.
James, do you think that the industry need to do more to make end users more aware of what technology solutions are available and to better understand what the technology can do for them? If so, how can they do this?
Well, I think as we've discussed, the answer is yes, probably do. And as we've also discussed, it's not that easy. But yeah, I think particularly, as we said right at the beginning, this proliferation of different technologies around the moment is making things a bit more confusing, as Matt said. So it's, everybody's got to do more with less. Companies aren't, so getting that message out there and trying to educate them is going to be very difficult. I think it is a tricky thing to do, but we need to try and get that message out there. And as we were saying earlier, you get things like people with a push-to-talk radio. It can do all sorts of things, and all they do is hit the push-to-talk button and the emergency button, which is very frustrating for everybody who's put tons of effort actually to supporting all sorts of different applications that they could use, and they just don't. So yeah, it's never been easy, and it's not got any easier, I think.
It's got to start small. You can't boil the ocean, so just to start small and try and get these little bits in. And we're definitely seeing the trend at the low end levels of really sort of integration of alarms, protection of lone worker, tracking of assets, task management. We're seeing these things now coming through. So I think it's definitely happening. But the pace of the technology change is overlapping the pace of the actual culture change within the organisations. So it's an interesting time.
I think it's quite useful if it's possible to for our partners who are talking to end users to either themselves engage or even involve a manufacturer to help with live trials. So,
Yes, yeah.
so if you've got, for example, a fire situation, or somewhere like a high-rise building, for example. Say you wanted to think about what might happen in a Grenfell Tower situation. Do a live trial. Demonstrate what a solution could do for them, so the end user actually uses it, gets a feel for it, and actually sees what it can deliver for them. I think that sort of instills the confidence as well.
Then you've got to be on hand to capture all the good
Yeah,
information
indeed.
they give you at the end of it. Yeah.
Because then they get, what about
That's
this
it.
would have been nice,
Yeah.
and you go, fine,
Yeah, exactly.
there's a solution for that.
Yeah.
But they often don't think about it until they're in that
True.
situation.
Mm.
Thank you. Is it important for the industry to move away from silo technology solutions and help customers make sure customers can make the most of any technology through converged, unified solutions?
I think this really underpins everything we've been saying, really, this idea of unified communications. It's been talked about a lot over the last 10 years, but probably it's really only coming through the last few years where you've actually got the platforms, the software platforms that can physically unite all these different technologies onto one management platform. And certainly Hytera have got them, and Matt's got some interesting new stuff coming out on that side of things. I think this is going to be absolutely vital. And probably one of the key things there is, you can have some of these systems are huge and they can pull in all sorts of different things in all this thing. But if you take the approach that Hytera does, is modular. You just take the bits you need, and that way you can help try and scale it to the customers, different size customers' requirements and how complex their needs are. You can say, right, you just need that bit and that bit, forget about that. Or you can add it later. It's making it easy for the end user to get these things, and then as they adopt more technologies, pull them onto these platforms.
We saw it with the MEN Arena incident, the Ariana Grande thing. You've got the fire brigade, you've got the police, you've got the ambulance service. They're the primaries, and they don't all have the same communication hardware that they use. And then you go and think, okay, well, then you've got the press officer, you've got the chief who's making the decisions, the command and control. They're not typically on the same thing. So how do you make sure that that incident is managed effectively when you've got so many people all purchasing from their own frameworks and all trying at the best? The hardest part of their job at that moment is to try and communicate across the entire piece. Very difficult. But that silo mentality, is changing. I'm certain of that, and I think it is these incidents and the availability of this interoperable communication structure. I think that's really driving their thought processes.
I suppose what underpins it really is it's these other things like video, streaming, real-time information coming in. It's improving situational awareness, and that's obviously critical for public safety, for the commander on the ground and the operations centre to get a better idea of the picture of what's going on. But also in just that we've been talking about those big factories, or just getting an idea of where is everybody, where's my assets, I've tagged this, that and the other, where's that expensive bit of kit gone? Oh, I can see it, I've got a tag that tells me where it is and somebody's moving it, and then an alarm goes off because he's past the geofence area and it shouldn't be going out. It's all that kind of thing you're feeding through, but you've also got your security cameras coming in, body-worn cameras feeding in, all sorts of stuff.
But imagine if you're the fire brigade turning up into that factory space, wouldn't it be nice if you knew where all of the oxyacetylene, all of the combustible material were, so that you're not sending the team in blind, you've got some real data. And then we do a system where you can lock down areas. So if you have an intruder, let's say, wanting to do harm, we could lock down the rooms just for the push of the two-way radio. Well, that's starting to make sure that the response is faster. It's more joined up, but then we can give a key to the fire brigade so that they can go back in. They're not having to struggle at the closed areas. They've got free access. But just thinking about it in a wider context is really important.
Yeah, what I thought was rather interesting this year was the focus on drones at BAPCO this year, and thinking about the fact that a drone could maybe carry a body cam and go into an incident before a person has to go in there, so that there's an awareness of what's around and what's going on before the person has to actually go in there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and even the use of drones to be part of the distributed antenna system. Could you rapid deploy an antenna system with drones?
Absolutely.
Tether them, keep the power, and keep
give
it
some coverage.
Yeah, give it coverage. Yeah.
We've also seen some experiments I've heard about when they're actually sending little robots or things into fires that actually have measurements for the heat, the amount of heat and stuff given off, and the idea is that eventually, and that also they've sort of attached this to, or they're trying to attach this to on the computer with artificial intelligence that will build up an understanding of how fires perform given the types of building and the materials in it. And the idea is you get this whole database coming up, and it will then send, you need to get your guys out because I recognise from my database that the roof is about to collapse or something like this, or there's going to be an explosion or something like this. So, these are some way off, but the technology is kind of there now. But
I think the role of artificial intelligence is incredibly exciting. The big data sets are there to crunch this stuff. So we know how crowds move in an incident. We know if there's a bomb threat, they're going to flood towards the exit. This can all be modelled. So that should be modelled and be part of your response team. The dispatcher of the future should be making recommendations to the operators to say, this is where we think you should be deploying your resource. This is where you think you should be, perhaps do this. That's the kind of thing that I think AI starts to bring in on a critical, as well as facial recognition, as well as identifying the threat and tracking them over a huge area.
Yeah.
James, unified communications have been discussed for a decade now, or probably more, but it seems that only in the last few years have platforms really begun to deliver. How would you describe the capability of the technology now?
It seems it can do almost anything. You can pull in all sorts of feeds now, and particularly voice obviously is there, and then you can unify the different voices, so you can have fixed telephony, cellular, land mobile radio, all of that coming in. Then you get all the video feeds. You can get social media feeds, so there's some interesting differences here. I've said that American police don't like looking at these kind of things, but I know the Met in London is particularly likes trying to source social media, what's going on in social media, because it might give them an alert as to what's going on. You've got all that kind of thing coming in. And I think what's also now coming in is alerts coming from alarms, but we've got this whole explosion in Internet of Things, or it will explode, and then suddenly you're going to have literally thousands of data points coming in, and that all has to be managed, but it can tell you all sorts of interesting things about what's going on in the environment, depending on what's being monitored and what the sensors are doing. The Americans have had gunshot alarms. There's out there, if it hears a gunshot, what it thinks is a gunshot, an alert will go to the police, and they can, it'll identify where it is. And so you've got all of this stuff that's now coming in. These are big, complex systems, and they're sort of for use by big police forces and others like that. But there are smaller varieties of this that can be used on a more localised basis.
If I think about our industry, the industry that I work in, for years we sort of sat off on the side, and we sat off on the side because a lot of our interfaces were analog, what we call 4-wire, things like that. They were very hard to integrate into everything else. And of course with IP, that just opened the door, and all of our stuff now that we make is actually can connect very easily into other things. Like it's made it easier to combine with cellular. It made telephony interconnect so much easier, things like that. Internet of Things. So it opened the door. PMR kind of got opened up really because of that one thing, actually, when I think about it. It just made life so much easier. Even connecting radio sites was so much easier with IP.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so that was a huge milestone.
And you look at video, let's say you wanted to download your favourite film in 3G. Well, that would take around about 20 hours. Now you do it with 4G, that might take 20 minutes. On the horizon is 5G, that's less than a second to do the same thing. So that data rate, that speed, availability of really high quality data starts to really sort of fuel where this could go. Yeah.
And some of that's just all come down to, if you think about it's just wireless techniques, which is just incredible that they can get that much data in the same bandwidth, as we call it, that you know you just couldn't do that. And it's not that long ago that you couldn't do it. Actually,
it's one of the things that the PMR manufacturers have struggled with, isn't it? The vocoders, you've got to push data and voice down this, and then you're going to have a compromise somewhere. And I think the old analog side, it was very humanistic. A lot of the human tones came through over the radio, and people liked that. And then in the new digital world, you get things like the compression, replacement of error bits with previous. So it's been a challenge.
What options would you say are available in terms of different levels of sophistication and finding suitable solutions for different sizes of organisations?
It's wide ranging as well, from the very small organisations where they could just make a better use of their two-way radio and really sort of capitalise on the voice quality, especially at the edge of signal strength. You know, that's been a huge move forward, and then right to the further ends of critical communication, where you're pulling in large state data, especially in the US. Companies like Everbridge are doing an incredible job at sort of that critical communication, mission critical solutions, and really sort of giving the law enforcement agencies and all people that they're sort of hooked into weather warnings, you know, ahead of the thing, you know, gunshot alarms, start preparing, all of these kind of things can come in. So the path up is long and winding.
James, how would you sum up the advantages of a unified comms approach for customers, and what benefits does it bring?
On a critical comm side, it just gives you so much more situational awareness, because you haven't got just to relay what's happening by this person on the ground over the voice channel. So the operator who's trying to mobilise forces is not relying on possibly a panicky voice description. You may be able to actually see it. You may be able to launch a drone. It'll be there in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and you're getting oversight of what's happening with crowds. You may even be able to track a perpetrator or whatever it is, or just, you know, here's the fire. It looks like this. Okay, we need to send this fire appliance or that one. All sorts of stuff like that. So I think unified comms really is. Will be a huge advantage for many companies and organisations, but they can be quite small and tailored. I think it's just understanding what's out there, and you don't have to buy these giant all singing all dancing ones. You can get, as we said earlier, you can get modular elements of it that suits your particular organisation. So I think it's a huge important step forward, as Chris was saying, with having everything IP based. It's just made life so much easier. And so, you know, I'm sure we'll see all sorts of new things coming through because of it.
I think one of the interesting aspects is that you've got the incident, but how prepared are you before the incident? What does your team look like? Do you have your first aiders on site? So just a simple sign in, sign out on a two-way radio, some kind of rota system, making sure that you've got the key first aiders, the fire marshals in place, all of those kind of things. You can highlight and use the technology now to tell the management team, actually, you're short of a couple of people, you might need to rectify that. And then you have the incident hit, and then it's how fast can you tell the people that need to be told on whatever device they've got. And so we're agnostic in our mass notification side, and we'll go out to push to talk over cellular, DMR, Tetra, all sorts of different communication technologies, because we know that the faster we can deliver that message, the better the response is going to be. But there's two parts: what happens before and then what happens after the incident.
Chris, there are talks and increased awareness on 5G cellular systems in discussion for critical communications. What are your thoughts on cellular system in terms of security and reliability?
That's a difficult one. I mean, obviously 5G is coming, but really we sort of are still sort of pretty focused on 4G at the moment. I think probably there are concerns. I would have concerns myself around security of cellular, or particularly public cellular networks. I think it may be a little bit different if it's a private cellular, like for example a private LTE, because I think you can actually put your own security into that. But if it's a public network, I think it's a little challenging and I think actually the public perception is that as well. How secure is that? How easy would it be to to impact or to cause an issue, some kind of threat or all that. That said, even because radio networks are IP connected, you also have to have security concerns around those. So that's something that as manufacturers we've had to put a lot of work into, actually putting secure ends to our radio networks, because they're potentially connected to something else now. They're not like they used to be. They're IP connected, so therefore they could be subject to threat as well. So I think 4G, 5G, anything that's connected via IP or the internet these days is something that security is of concern. And you have to keep evolving it as well. It's like our PCs. Virus threats, you have to keep updating your programs to protect against that, because the people who threaten us are evolving new things every day.
I think that's key, because it's the people at the end of it. We see in healthcare people looking to Wi-Fi devices, looking for well, how did the malware hit? And caused so much damage that someone opened an email.
Exactly.
And it proliferated through. So you can do all of the design work you like, you can put every piece of encryption in, but at the end of it, it's people that will
that could impact it. Yes, exactly.
I think that you've got that whole, the virtualization and the use of the cloud is, how secure is the cloud? Sure, you can have a private cloud, but even that can be vulnerable. But using public clouds, how secure is that? You're relying on something that's not in your gift to manage as the end user. And the other side, I think, is going to be, particularly with 5G coming, is and 4G when you get massive Internet of Things, suddenly the attack front for a malware or a denial of service attack is huge. You have thousands, tens of thousands of end devices at the edge of the network that you can attack through and get into the core. And this is where I think, as we mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence is going to be enormously important, because humans, we're not going to be able to monitor this. There's got to be an algorithm that understands what these, and that sort of machine learning that understands what these edge devices are doing and how they normally perform. And then if something odd happens, it will trigger an alert. That's what's going to have to happen. So artificial intelligence will be absolutely key to managing the security of these. Because, as I say, there's going to be tens of thousands, if not millions, of edge devices out there, all connecting into your vulnerable secure core, allegedly secure core.
Maybe we'll go full circle and no one will ever want to connect again.
They started off with the fridge that would order your groceries for you, but which if that got hacked, okay, fine, But then you're talking about the hack of a baby monitor, and your kids, are then compromised, and that's not what you. So the public have got a responsibility for making great choices, and the manufacturers have got a responsibility to lock this stuff down as far as possible. Absolutely. But there's threats from kids in the bedrooms and really sophisticated hacking networks around the world.
Even your vacuum cleaner could go mad. The ones that self-clean, they could get in and make it do something else, or
Thank you. And lastly, regarding critical communication systems, is it important that end users receive value add-ons for better return on investment? And what is currently in the market to provide this? Let's start with you, Matt.
I think value add is incredibly important, and it's all really driven by that return on investment. If you can show the value of the piece, it's more than the sum of the parts as well. You know, I think that's a huge challenge for people, and it really focuses your mind into thinking about what their problems are. Going back to the personal side, the problem contract is very important to extract that value. I think at the moment it seems to be by the channel partner sales teams that they're trying to extract as much value as possible, and I'm not sure that's the best place. But I think, as we said, you know, Land Mobile magazine, the big trade shows, they can elevate the thought process and show them what is possible, and show them where the real value is when they think about it in a different way.
Chris?
I think one of you two guys, I think it might have been James, mentioned earlier on about, which I thought was really important, was about the business needs, because often end users don't actually really care about the bottom line. They need something to work, or they need a solution, but it's got to fit a business model, and you know, has to be cost effective and affordable as well. And also, if an end user is changing from something that is existing, they always want something more. If they're going to upgrade something, they want more, particularly too because a lot of the solutions in our industry have been in place for a long time. They tend to have a long life cycle. So therefore there's been a lot of technology advance over, say, 10 to 15 years, and they expect a delivery of something that, and they don't want to spend loads and loads more money either to get it, because obviously there's budgets involved as well. So
we do a lot of work with the super yacht industry, and we see them walking around the vessels. We call it the Batman effect. They have multiple items on their bat belts. So whether it's a pager or a two-way radio, they've got their smartphone. They're a walking communication tower. And really, if you can combine all of that, you're making cost savings, the maintenance drops, and actually the two-way radio systems are capable of doing a lot of the same functionality. And really just thinking about it in that way, you can make these sort of the savings that these... Yeah.
Unify.
That's a great word.
I think it's having the operating systems and platforms that you can. So as you say, it's an expensive piece of kit to buy radios and stuff. So people want to have them for a long time, much longer than they would a mobile phone. And it's having the ability to then say, yeah, actually no, 2 years down the line, we've got all sorts of new things we can do, and it's just a software or firmware upgrade. You keep adding value that way, so they feel they're getting, that you don't have to swap out the radio, which you can buy new radios. You've got new things that are coming through, new applications that are going to help businesses and organisations. So.
Thank you all for your time today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.